Hello, everyone. This is the 244th episode of Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles and the Soccer Nostalgia blog. For this episode, I welcome back distinguished professor Dr. Laurent Bellaiche of University of Arkansas as we discuss Saint-Étienne in the years 1976 to 1984 and the downfall of the Rocher presidency and La Caisse Noire scandal. Dr. Ballaiche is also a professor at Tel Aviv University, and he has designed a new class called Thinking Outside of the Box, a course that involves science and football. Welcome back, Laurent.
Thank you. Always a true pleasure to be here.
Let's go back in time. This story starts in 1976, 50 years ago, where French club Saint-Étienne is at its absolute zenith, following a third straight league title, as well as losing the final of the Champions Cup to Bayern Munich at Glasgow and those famous poteaux carrés, those the square goalposts. Can you paint a picture of the status of Saint-Étienne, Les Verts as they're called, in the French football landscape at this instant?
Yes. So as you say, it's three straight league titles, 74, 75, 76, but two French Cups as well,
Oh,
74 and
yes.
75, a semi-final of the European Cup in 75 against Bayern, and the final loss against Bayern again in 76. It's at the zenith, and the whole France is in green, like this jersey given by my brother. Salut Fabien. There is even a song, a very popular song, Allez les Verts, Go Green. And even when they lost the final, there was a parade in Champs-Élysées in Paris. 100,000 people came to celebrate this final, and even the French president received the whole team. And it was a time where, we don't talk too much about spouses of players, but this team was so popular. There were even articles about spouses before the final. So how can we understand this thing? We can understand this because there was not a single French team who went to final of European competitions in 1959 with Reims. And the French national team was also very bad between 1960 and 1976, with no qualification for European competition, for Euro, only one qualification for a World Cup in 66, and it was a poor performance there. And so the team is Saint-Étienne is there. It really brings the whole generation to love soccer, including mine. The French team became good. Saint-Étienne was fantastic. And on top of that, there was absolutely crazy games. For example, the quarterfinals against Dynamo Kiev. In the first leg in Kiev, 2-0. And the blocking is phenomenal. It's the golden ball of 1975. Dynamo Kiev had just won the C2 of 1975. And then it's the return game in Saint-Étienne. And Oleg Blokin's goals is everybody thinks he's going to score. Christian Lopez take the ball, counter-attack, first goal of Saint-Étienne, 65 minutes by Hervé Révelli. And then second goal by Jean-Michel Larquet, extra time, and Rocher, with nicknamed the Green Angel, nickname that he absolutely hated, score. So it was fantastic. And then semi-final against PSV Eindhoven, 1-0 at Saint-Étienne. First leg, a free kick for Jean-Michel Larquet. And then it's the return game, and PSV Eindhoven is attacking all the time. And Kurkovic, the goalkeeper, is absolutely phenomenal and stop everything, 0-0. Qualification for the final. And as you said, the square post, two shots at the crossbar by Santini and Battenet. If the post would have been round, it would have been goal. But still, the whole generation of people learned to love soccer through Saint-Étienne in 76.
The central figure in this story are club president Rocher, the man with the pipe, the manager Robert Herban, the Sphinx, and chief recruiter Pierre Garonner. They formed a powerful trident that was responsible for Saint-Étienne's glory. Can you describe this trio's trajectory and influence on French football with Saint-Étienne as its premier team?
A phenomenal trio. If you start with a coach, Robert Urban, He was first a player in Saint-Étienne from 1957 to 1972. And when he was a player, he won 5 French titles, French championships, and 3 French Cups. Then he became the coach of Saint-Étienne. It is Albert Batteux who recommended him to Rocher, but he stopped playing and became a coach. And as a coach, he won 4 French championships and 3 again French Cups. There, he was voted best French coaches by France Football, the soccer magazine, in 73 and 76. If you look at the whole palmarès of Saint-Étienne, it is 10 French championships and 6 French Cups, meaning that he has won every single title of Saint-Étienne except the first championships in 1957, because he arrived just the summer after that. So a phenomenal figure of the history of Saint-Étienne. Then you have Pierre Garonner, who is born in Saint-Étienne, who died in Saint-Étienne, and he has really a green heart. He played for Saint-Étienne from 1935 to 1945, for 10 years. And then he begins the scout to look, to discover new players from 1950 to 1989, 39 years. He discovered Robert Urbain. He's the one who discovered Urbain, and Urbain is often considered as the spiritual son of Pierre Garonner. He discovered other players like the Tilensky brother, that was very important in the 50s and 60s. Georges Beretta was a great French player. And if you look at the all 11 players who played the final in 1976, all of them were discovered or recruited by Pierre Garonner, the French player, but also the goalkeeper Kurkovic from Yugoslavia and the Argentinian defender Osvaldo Piazza there. So very, very important in the history of Saint-Étienne. And Rocher is also very important there. He's born in 1920, but in another part, not in Saint-Étienne, but the family moved very early in Saint-Étienne, and even at 17, he went to work in the mine, the coal mine in Saint-Étienne. And then he built public and road work companies, and in fact he was hired by the team of Saint-Étienne to build again the stadium, Geoffroy Guichard. He did a very good job, and they asked him to be a board member. He accepted that. He became vice president in 1960, and then president from 1961 to 1982, when Saint-Étienne was by far the best French team and could win against any European teams. He had 3 great coaches under his presidency. Jean Snella, who is a great friend of Pierre Garonner. Albert Batteux, who recommended Robert Urbain as coach, and Robert Urbain himself. This, as you say, is very famous to smoke the pipe, but also to have very funny sentences. For instance, there's a huge rivalry between Lyon, which is the big city, and Saint-Étienne, which is a smaller city. And Rocher said that in terms of football, Saint-Étienne is the capital and Lyon is the suburbs. So he was always making fun of Lyon, and he did great thing for Saint-Étienne. Unfortunately, the story didn't end well, but he was very important in the building of a great team.
And you already mentioned some of the more familiar names, but what were the other players that formed the backbone of this squad as we come to 1976?
So I will say the whole team. I mean, it's more, it's going to be 50 years, but I still remember very clearly this team, especially the one who plays against Dynamo Kiev, the return leg, because I think it's the best team there. So the goalie is Kurkovic, extraordinary goalie, one of the best ever in the French league. In defense, you have Gérard Janvion, extremely fast defender, Piazza, fantastic defender, but also known to counterattack with a long hair. Flowing in the air while he was counter-attacking. He was associated with Christian Lopez, and great defender. On the left defense side, there was Gérard Farison, a good player. In the midfield, you have someone that is sometimes forgotten, but it should not be. Is Christian Seneigel, which really was a quiet player, but very important. Jean-Michel Larquet is the captain, and Dominique Battenet is very important for the team, can shoot from far away and very smart player. The forward are usually Rocher on the right side, even if he's only 21. Hervé Révelli is a fantastic goal scorer. And the left side, there is Christian Saramagna. From time to time, you have a change. Santini can play in the midfield, and Patrick Révelli can also play as a forward. All of these guys are international, except they play for the French team, national team. except Jacques Santini. And what is also interesting to realize is that from 1930 to 1979, there was a special award called in French Concours du Jeune Footballeur, which is basically the Young Soccer Player Award. And two of these guys won it. Jean-Michel Larquet, won in 1964, when he was 16 years old, and Christian Sarmagna in 1968, when he was also 16, 17. And both of them come from the same part of France, which is the French part of the Basque country. So thanks to Pierre Garner, he saw very great players at the early age and made them coming to Saint-Étienne.
Yeah, and other players on the books, you have like Alain Merchadier, Pierre Repellini.
Mm-hmm.
You have young players who are about to break through, like Felix Lacuesta and Jean-François Larios, who are like a few years away from actually reaching their potential. And of course, others like Jean-Marc Char is also on the book.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of good players on this team.
For sure.
In 1976-77 season, Saint-Étienne had a relatively poor season in the league by their standards. They finished fifth as Nantes became champions. They did win the French Cup though, which would be the last one of this era. And in Europe, the L'Épopée des Verts, that's what it was called, was stopped by Liverpool in the quarterfinals, who started their own legend in the competition. This ended their great European run, stretching many seasons, and was a reference point. Was this season in general looked upon as the reference point, signaling an end of a cycle?
It's a good question. I'm not completely sure because the team is more or less the same than the year before, except perhaps that Patrick Revelli is now in the starting 11. He's preferred with respect to Christian Sarmagna or even his brother, Aviv Revelli. Santini is playing more in the midfield. So the team is more or less the same. It was also great to win the French Cup because it's very prestigious in France. And there was a semi-final that year against Nantes, which was phenomenal. They lose 3-0 at Nantes in the first leg. And in the second leg, after 90 minutes, it's 3-0 for Saint-Étienne. Extra times. And at the last minute, Hervé Revelli scored the fifth goal, which gave 5-1. And they went to the final and won that French Cup. And in European competitions, not bad at all. They eliminated Sofia, 0-0 in Bulgaria, 1-0 in Saint-Étienne with Piazza. Then PSV Eindhoven again, 0-0 in Netherlands and 1-0 at home with Piazza again. What is quite interesting is that the coach of PSV is Kees Rijvers.
Oh,
and
yes, yes.
he used to play in Saint-Étienne. In fact, he played in Saint-Étienne with Robert Urban at one point. But Robert Urban somehow always seems to win against Kees Rijvers as a coach. And then it's Liverpool in quarterfinal, 1-0 at home, win from a goal of Batney. And then it's fantastic games in Anfield Road in Liverpool. First, Keegan scored very quickly. Then there is a Batney who equalized, 1-1. 2-1 for Liverpool with Ray Kennedy. So, and until the 84 minutes, Saint-Étienne is still qualified. And then the super sub, David Fairclough, scored the last goal, 3-1. Saint-Étienne is eliminated. But to this day, I believe that if Saint-Étienne would have qualified, they would have won the European competition because the semi-final would have been against Zurich, which is not so great. And the final would have been against Borussia Mönchengladbach, which is a great team. But I think Saint-Étienne was better on the paper. And for the French league, some other teams had a good season. For example, Nantes won and had a good season. Lens has a great season. Bastia had a Jazik at that time, was a phenomenal player. And Nancy had Michel Platini, becoming a great player. So not a so great season in the championship for Saint-Étienne, a good season in French Cup, and in European competition, almost there. And in fact, what is very interesting is what you alluded to. If you ask fans of Liverpool, when did Liverpool become a great European team? They will not say, this is kind of surprising, that it is when Liverpool won the UEFA Cup in 73 or 76. They will say, most of them, the historic fan, it is when Liverpool eliminated Saint-Étienne in 1977. So this shows how Saint-Étienne was considered all over Europe as a great, great team.
In the 1977-78 season, captain Jean-Michel Larquet left the club. Larios and Lacuesta are loaned to Bastia, who will have a magnificent season and reach the UEFA Cup with the Corsican side. And also Jean-Marc Char joins Auxerre. And the arrivals include Jacques Zimaco from Bastia, André Barthélemy from Angers, and Patrick Rampion from Reims, among others. Also, you have future players like Jean-Louis Zanon, Patrice Garand, Laurent Rousset are in the youth academy moving up to the first team. Though I don't think Garand ever made an appearance at this point. But he would later make it a decade later, though.
Yes.
Saint-Étienne do even worse in the league. They finished seventh and would fail to qualify to Europe, despite still being regarded as France's emblematic team. They are also eliminated in the first round in Europe to Manchester United. So, was it clear at this point that a team overhaul would be required to get back to the top?
I think so. This is in my mind, the year where you say, okay, someone has to do something to change the team with respect to the 1976 teams. Because as you say, the 7 in the French league for Saint-Étienne, it's not acceptable. It's 11 points behind the champion. Monaco, European competition, it's a disappointment, even if the team they eliminated was Manchester United, which was a good team. There, but also in French Cup, eliminated by Sochaux in the round of 16. There are some players. Zimaco is a great player, but he just arrived, and the first season he didn't play very much. Laurent Rocher, for me, is an extremely gifted player, but he was only 16 at that time, so too young yet. And Jean-Michel Larquet left the team probably because of very bad relationship with Robert Urban. They didn't like each other too much at the end of the career. Hervé Revelli was a great goal scorer, but that season he only scored 8 goals. In fact, only 1 goal, the whole season in championship, so that's very weird. And the best striker was his brother, Patrick Revelli, with only 8 goals. So this is a terrible season with respect to the quality of what Saint-Étienne used to be and should be.
In the 1978-79 seasons, there's the further departures of Dominique Battenet, who joins Paris Saint-Germain, and both Revelli brothers. Hervé joins Chenois, and Patrick Revelli joins Sochaux. There's also the departure of Christian Sinagel, who joins Metz, and Alain Merchadier joins Nancy. And the arrivals include Jean-Marie Elie comes from Lens, Jean-François Larios returns from loan from Bastia. Importantly, Bernard Lacombe arrives from the rivals Olympique Lyonnais to bolster the attack. And also, there's the 2 players who move up from the youth team. Jean Castaneda, a goalkeeper, as well as a certain Laurent Paganelli, who at age 15 at the time would be the youngest ever first division player. There is a clear improvement as they finish third behind Strasbourg and Nantes, and of course qualified to Europe as a result. Was there a belief that they might be on their way back?
I think so. What is also interesting is at that time, I think a win was 2 points and a draw was 1 point. If it would have been like now, a win 3 points and a draw 1 point, it would be Saint-Étienne who would have won the championships that season and not Strasbourg in 79. As you say, there are still some heroes of 76 left. Big name. I mean, the Revelli brothers, Battenet and Sinagel are very important. Were very important players. But there are still some heroes of 76. Kukovic, who play a lot as a goalie still. Jean-Vian, Piazza, Lopez, Farizon, the whole defense. Santini in midfield is there, and Rocher had a great season, 21 goals in the French championships. And as you say, Larios will prove to be good. Elie is a great, solid player. Zimaco played more than the year before and playing well. Bernard Lacombe, even if it's the arch rival, he did score quite a few goals that season. Laurent Paganelli and Laurent Rousset, young players, but they started to make impact. So a very good team. The only disappointment, I will say, was the elimination in the French Cup, because it was eliminated by a second division team, which was Guignon. They lost 3-0 in Guignon and only won 2-0 at Saint-Étienne. What is quite interesting is that Guignon at the end of the season finished first of second division, so they should have been promoted, but they decided to stay amateur, not to become professional. So it's one of the few teams who refuse to go up, and they stay in second division the following year.
In the 1979-80 season, there's the departures of Christian Saramagna, who joined Montpellier, Bernard Lacombe, who by his standards had not had a very impressive season at Saint-Étienne. He joins Bordeaux. Patrice Garand, who still is a young prospect, he joins Chenois. Osvaldo Piazza, the Argentine defender, goes back home to Vélez Sarsfield. You have the important arrival of a certain Michel Platini, a very publicized arrival with everyone trying to sign him. We discussed him in our Nantes episode, where at some point he was also linked to Nantes, but Henri Michel may have been opposed, and also Dutch striker Johnny Rep from Bastia. Other players, Alain Chaussin, who caught their eye in their elimination. The defender comes from Guignon. Also from the youth team, you have players like Patrice Lestage and Thierry Oleksiak moving up to the first team. But still, Saint-Étienne finished third again, but do reach the quarterfinals of the UEFA Cup. They eliminate Zbigniew Boniek's Video Lodz, eliminate PSV Eindhoven again, defeating them 6-0 at home, and Greek side Aros Saloniki before being eliminated in the quarterfinals by Borussia Mönchengladbach. Despite not winning any titles, was this new Saint-Étienne starting to take shape to start a new cycle?
Yes, I really think so. What is quite interesting to know, I learned that quite recently, is that the trio that you mentioned, Rocher, Pierre Garner, and Robert Urbain, they disagree on these two arrivals of Michel Platini and Johnny Rep. Rocher was the one who signed them up and really wanted them, but Robert Urbain and Pierre Garner were against them because they say it's against a tradition to find young players, to train them, and then they became great players. There you have the best French players, probably of all time. Michel Platini was already a star. And you have Johnny Rep, who has played the last two finals of the World Cup in 74 and 78 with the Netherlands. So it's very different thinking. But I mean, both of them did very well. For instance, it was 16 goals from Platini in the French league and 15 goals from Johnny Rep. What is quite interesting is the name that you mentioned. This is very important to realize that also young players, as you said, were coming into the team. So it's always good, in my mind, to mix fantastic players like Platini and Rep. Some heroes of 76 are still there, like Kokovic, Jean-Vian, Lopez, Farizon, Repellini, Santini, and Rocheteau. And a young player. We talk about Rousset and Paganelli, but there is one I want to mention a little bit more, is Thierry Oleksiak. For history point of view, his dad is Jean Oleksiak, who was a player in Saint-Étienne in 1950s and 1960s. And in fact, the first game ever played by Saint-Étienne in a European competition is in 1957, is Saint-Étienne against Glasgow Rangers. It's the return leg. And the one who scored the first ever goal in Geoffroy Guichard and Saint-Étienne European competition is his dad, is Jean Oleksiak. And now the son is playing for Saint-Étienne, which is a great story in my mind. In Europe, as you say, eliminating the Lodz of Boniek, and Boniek and Platini will then play later on together. A fantastic return game against PSV 6-0. A tactical trick of Robert Urbain. He put Platini in defensive midfield, Laios as forward. And after 5 minutes, Saint-Étienne was already winning 3-0. Well, they lost 2-0 in Eindhoven. And then they finished the game 6-0. Then against Aris Thessaloniki, it was a fog at home and we could not see. It's a huge fog. It was on TV and we could not see the game, and Saint-Étienne won. And a lot of people in France, including myself, thought that Saint-Étienne will win the UEFA Cup, because if you can beat 6-0 PSV Eindhoven, which is a great team that won the 78 UEFA Cup, why not going to the end and winning that cup? Unfortunately, Borussia Mönchengladbach completely destroyed Saint-Étienne at home 4-1 with a player that was phenomenal that year. It's Linen. And in fact, Borussia was winning 4-0 and then Platini scored a goal on penalty kick. So there's still a big hope that Saint-Étienne will become again the best French team, and that especially they will win a European Cup, especially with Platini and Rep now on the team in the coming years.
We come to the 1980-81 season. It's a new look Saint-Étienne. You have the arrivals of Patrick Battiston coming from Metz, international defender. You have Bernard Gardon, another defender coming from Monaco, who would become, I guess at this point, he would have been the first player to win with three different teams the league title. You have the departures of Langevert, that he hates being called, Dominique Rocheteau to Paris Saint-Germain. André Barthélemy left, joined Angoulême. Gérard Farijon joined Fréjus. And Alain Chaussin returned to Guignon. This new look Saint-Étienne would win the league title, their first in 5 years and their last to date, and nearly won the double by losing the cup final to Bastia. They also reached the quarterfinals of the UEFA Cup. There's a famous match against Hamburg where they win 5-0 away from home at Hamburg. And this is the great Hamburg of Horst Hrubesch, Manfred Karls, you name it. But in the quarterfinals, they're eliminated by Ipswich Town of Bobby Robson as manager, who would go on and win the UEFA Cup that season. Were Saint-Étienne back to where they belong, or was there a worry that on European level they were no longer the force that they had been?
No, I don't think so. I think they came back as the best French team. They won the French league, and it was a very big surprise that they lost the final. They was the arch favorite against Bastia, but Roger Milla was phenomenal. But then there was a player that I like very much in Bastia, is Louis Marsalis. Was only 21 and scored one goal as well. His dad was a famous player, but for the other Corsican team, Ajaccio. There. So they won the French championship, went to the final of the French Cup. When they won against Hamburg, we also thought we are going to win the UEFA Cup. Because, as you say, Hamburg was a fantastic team. They won the C2 of 1977 against the Anderlecht of Rosenbrink. They will win in 1983 the C1 Cup against the Juventus of Platini and great players, like I mentioned, Karls Hrubesch there. And if you look at the team, who won 5-0 in Hamburg of Saint-Étienne. You have Castaneda, who is now number one. There in defense, Janvion, Lopez, Gardon, and Battiston, that you mentioned. It's very solid. In midfield, Zanon, Larios, Platini, very strong. Zanon will become Olympic champion in 1984, Platini European Euro champion. Larios was a great player, and the forwards are very good. Zimaco, very fast, named Zigzag because he was dribbling so much. Rep, who can score, and the young jewel, Laurent Paganelli. On top of that, you add Santini, Elie, Rocher. It's a very, very strong team. The disappointment was like the year before. You expect them to win. Then the year before, they failed against Borussia Mönchengladbach at home for 1. And that year, they failed against Ipswich at home for 1. A pity, because they could have went to the final. But Ipswich was very strong that year. There was John Wark, who scored 14 goals in this UEFA Cup there, and some great player like Paul Barry there as well. It could have been a French final, a complete all-French final between Saint-Étienne if they will qualify, and Sochaux if they would have eliminated Alkmaar in semi-final. But it didn't go that way. But still, people think, okay, almost there, almost. I mean, we can beat teams like PSV Eindhoven 6-0. We can beat teams like Hamburg 5-0. We have to win the European competition. Perhaps it's next year.
There's an interesting story about that game against Hamburg regarding Platini and West German manager Jupp Derval. So just a few weeks earlier before that, West Germany, the national team, had defeated France 4-1 at Hanover, I believe. And Michel Platini had been non-existent. And of course, the German team contained many Hamburg players, like we said, Karls, Hrubesch. Jupp Derval had criticized Platini. He said he looked like a general who's inspecting the field with binoculars. So after this 5-0 win against Hamburg, Platini said that this time I left my binoculars at home.
That's excellent. That's excellent. What is funny is, if I remember this game, so the German team was astonishing. I mean, they were already Euro champion in 1980, and they had some big guys there. But Michel Elgon, for some reason, decided to play some small guy like Amis, who was really tiny. I don't know why he did that, but because French was completely destroyed that year. There was this association, Karls and Hrubesch, both in Hamburg and in West Germany. And this association is very interesting because it used to be that Manfred Kals was nicknamed Manny, will cross
Cross,
the
yeah.
ball in a curve ball, like called a banana ball, and Rubesch will score with the head. And I remember to have read that one English journalist asked Rubesch, how can you explain this association? And he could not speak well English, but he decided to try, and he said, oh, it's easy, money, banana, me, head, goal. This is how he explained this association. It was very strong team. So once again, this emphasizes that Saint-Étienne winning 5-0 in Hamburg. This is phenomenal.
And that season, Larios is also taking a new dimension as being looked upon as one of the leader of France national team's midfield, and he will become the French Player of the Year that year, if I'm not mistaken.
In
And
1980.
it's almost a shame someone like Laurent Paganelli never gained the cap. If it was these days, you can imagine he probably would have had 50 caps by the time he was 19.
I
But
think so.
yeah,
He explained once. I mean, we saw him the first time on TV when he was 14, 15 with the U14 or U15 team in a tournament called Montaigu Tournament, and he was absolutely phenomenal. They won 6-0, I think, final against West Germany. He was from another world. So everyone believed when we saw him at 15, 16, he's the great star. Could it be even better than Platini? The guy is really something. But a lot of people compare him with Peter Pan, but he never grew up. For him, it was just a joy to play. He didn't want all the constraints to be a professional player. France has lost a great player with him. He should have been one of the best ever.
yeah, and of course these days he's a famous pundit for in French television. For the 1981-82 season, the season where all the troubles would start at the end. Before we discuss the scandal that would undo this institution, let's look at the events on the field first. You have the departures of Jacques Santini, who joined Montpellier, and Jacques Zimaco, who joined Sochaux. You have the arrivals of the Argentine striker Raul Nogues from Nice. You have Danish striker Benny Nielsen coming from Anderlecht. You also have players like Jean-Marc Ribard and Jean-Francois Daniel moving up from the youth team. It would be the last good year of Saint-Étienne as a force. They finished runner-up in the league in a very narrow race against Monaco and lost by just 1 point. And they also reached the final of the French Cup, but lose to Paris Saint-Germain on a penalty kick shootout in Michel Platini's last match for Saint-Étienne. What was the takeaway from this season on the field, where they also get eliminated in the preliminary round of the Champions Cup to Dynamo Berlin? This season could have ended as a double, but of course they finish empty-handed. I'm not discussing the scandal yet, but just looking at analytically at the events on the field, how would you analyze this season?
The season is not bad. They were really, really close to, as you say, to win the double. The disappointment is the European competition because you expect Saint-Étienne to really go far away in European competition. We're used to that. It can be a C1 or the C3 European competition. And eliminating in preliminary round by Dynamo Berlin was really a disappointment. In terms for the French championships, you have a couple of points behind Monaco, but 22 goals from Platini there. The French Cup was very, very close. 2-2, 2 goals of Platini in the final, and equalization from PSG from the former Green Angel, Rocher, who played for Paris at that time, and they won in penalty kicks, so it was very close. A lot of young players came again to play again, and you still have, some great players. For example, I look at the team who play the final of these French Cups against Paris Saint-Germain. You have Castaneda in defense, who play for the national team as well. You have Lesage, a young guy. Gardon Lopez, very solid central defense. Battiston, great French players. Janvion, Zanon, Larios, all very good players. And Platini, Rep, Paganelli, and then Nogues come and Rocher come. So this team is very, very solid, very, very good team. So still think before the summer of 1982, where you will see a lot of problems and a lot of great players leaving, still think that this team is close to win something, but as we know, they will never win again up to now a French title or a French Cup after that.
The start of troubles within the club were noticed in the spring of 1981 and came to a head at the end of the 1981-82 season. Can you describe the troubles that included not only financial issues but also personal ones, not to mention Michel Platini's departure to Juventus and his feud with Larios over a private matter that came to light during the 1982 World Cup?
First, I forgot perhaps to say that in the 92-82 World Cup, there were 6 players from Saint-Étienne who were in the French squad: Castaneda, Battiston, Janvion, Lopez, Platini, and Larios. So it's the most with Bordeaux. So you can see that even the French coach is very hopeful that Saint-Étienne is still a great team. So you have Platini leaving, which is a big change, because Platini has always said a very interesting sentence. He first played in the best team from Lorraine, Nancy, because he was not selected by Metz. In fact, when he was young, he passed out when he had to do the exam of how much hair does he contain inside his body. And this was the president of Metz, Carlos Molinari, always say that he cannot believe that he missed Michel Platini. Then he say he played the best French team with Saint-Étienne, and then he say I play in the best world team, a team of the world with Juventus. Now, just before the World Cup, there is a rumor that Jean-François Larios had an affair with the wife of Michel Platini. So Larios played the first game with Platini at his side, and it's a loss against England, 3-1. At the end of the game, there are 2 theories, because Larios didn't play anymore until the third place game against Poland. There are 2 theories. I don't know which one is correct. Some say that Michel Platini came to see Michel Ago and say, it's either Larios or myself. I will not play anymore with this guy on the field. And it's true, in the third place game, Larios played, but Platini didn't play. Another theory says that Jean-François Larios say, I'm going to sacrifice myself. I'm going not to play. In fact, he even went to Spain to negotiate a contract there. So that's what he say. I don't know which one is correct. But what I know for sure is that I think it was a kind of pity, especially because of the semi-final. The semi-final is against West Germany, and France is winning 3-1. With not a lot of minutes left. We know that it came back after that to 3-3 and France lost in penalty kicks. But if it is 3-1 and you put someone like Jean-François Larios on the field, this will have been a different story in my mind, because Jean-François Larios is very good to stop attacking play from the other team, and he's very strong physically. This is what you need against the West German player of that time. There. And Michel Ago didn't have this possibility. So we can debate that over some time, but I have read some article pursuing this idea that if Jean-François Larios would have been on the field, even as a sub and then coming into the field against West Germany, French will have been to the final and play against Italy that year. We will never know.
The La Caisse Noire scandal, the black box, unraveled after a newspaper article in Loire Matin on April 1st, 1982. Can you walk us through its ramifications?
Yes, in fact, it completely broke the dynamics of Saint-Étienne there. So this slush fund affair, in fact, it started in 1947, so it's a very long time. But it became amplified under Rocher. It is said that 20 million of francs were put aside, not declared to the equivalent of IRS, and it was given illegally to some players, and not anybody, not some unknown players. It was given to Larios, Platini, Janvion, Piazza, and also to the coach, Robert Urban, there. So because of this problem, Rocher resigned on May 1982, and he was condemned to 4 years in jail and fined 800,000 francs. The other players that I mentioned were given a fine there, so it was very bad, this one. Really, after that, Saint-Étienne never came back to the top of the French league.
And to give it more context, you have attorney André Bouffard, who was a member of the club's administration. He would be one of the chief actors in the events that would follow. He felt that the early signs were there by the spring of 1981. He said some administrators were suspicious of financial practices. Rocher was behaving like a dictator, and his relationship with Erban and Garonner was not what it was once before. And in fact, I think Rocher had wanted to dismiss both of them at some point, it seems like.
Mm.
Rocher also wanted to place Ivan Kurkovic, the Yugoslav goalkeeper, on the technical staff, and that was something that Erban did not want. There was a rift growing within the squad. Apparently, by spring 1982, Rocher learns of an impending coup against him within the club, and there was an anti-Rocher faction, which were the pro-Erban crowd, and others who were pro-Rocher. There was even a story that on April 12th, Robert Herban's house was broken into, presumably by Rocher loyalists. And Herban believes that there may have been an attempt to poison his dogs. With the pressure mounting on
Mhm.
Rocher, he resigned on May 17th. This is after 21 years as club president.
Mhm.
Many felt that it was a tactical resignation as he believed that he would be re-elected again. Christian Lopez, who was the captain of the team, who was pro Rocher, he also left Saint-Étienne after Rocher's resignation and would join Toulouse. He said that he would have stayed had Rocher stayed. After Rocher left, Ivan Kurkovic's position is also somewhat untenable and he has to leave. Platini left, of course. You can see it's not only the financial aspect, but also
Mhm.
the players who are jumping ship, who most of them would have presumably stayed had this not happened.
Mm.
Getting back to the events on the field before we get back to the greater ramifications of this scandal on the season that would follow, in this 1981 and 82 phase, there was much hype about Jean-Francois Larios, like I said, as the future of France in midfield. Did these private problems derail his career as well as this scandal in the aftermath?
I really, really think so because if you look what happened before this scandal, especially between 1978 and 1982, he was a regular of a French team. He played 17 times, and when it was the World Cup, when he stopped playing, it's a third place game against Poland, was his last game for France, and he was only 25 years old at that time. He was elected best French player in 1980. He was also very important for Bastia to reach the UEFA Cup, as you mentioned, in 1978, and he was only 21, 22 at that time. So he was extremely promising player. He was good technically speaking, smart on the field, but also very good physically. For example, Platini is a great player, but you cannot say he's very good, strong physically. Well, Larios seems to have everything for him. And when you look at his career after he left Saint-Étienne, it's not good. I mean, he played at Montreal and in smaller French team like Lyon, Strasbourg, Nice, Montpellier. Usually he only stay one season. He lost his magical touch. Perhaps his mind was also touched and he was disappointed. He was not in his right mind anymore, so he was never as good as before, which is a pity, especially for what I said before. In the semi-final of the World Cup in 1982, he would have been a very important player to put on the field. So very promising. The big problem with affair with the wife of Platini, and then after that, not a great career.
And interestingly, he would become a very successful player agent
Mm.
later. 1982-83 season. Saint-Étienne has a new president, but would have a very difficult season. Robert Herban would be sacked in January 1983. There's changes in the team. Raul Nogues, he joins Racing Club. Of course, Platini joins Juventus. Christian Lopez joins Toulouse. And the Danish striker Benny Nilsson would later go back to Denmark. As far as arrivals, you have another Danish player, Flemming Christensen from Lyngby. You have Alain Moisan arriving from Olympique Lyonnais. Bernard Gengini arrived to replace Platini. He came from Sochaux. Philippe Maut came from Metz, but the team struggles with all the problems hanging over his head. They would finish in the 14th position, and Erban sacking in January 1983, an era was over. The scandal is still unfolding as the season is proceeding. Was there a feeling at this point that this might just be a transitional year, or did people expect worse things to come?
Personally, I thought it will be a traditional season, that they will bounce back. Perhaps not at the top as we had before, but close to the top. The reason is that there's still some good players left: Castaneda, Battiston, Janvion, Zano, and Rep there. And the player we mentioned, Philippe Mahut, Alain Moison, and Giangini, they are all internationals. And so some good players and some young players are coming also into the team more and more. Thierry Wolf, Lestage, Primard a little bit, Paganelli, Jean Vauchois-Daniel, always a good player. Laurent Rocher. But the whole season is a total disaster. They finished 14, as you mentioned, only 3 points above the relegation to second division. They are limited by a second division team in the French Cup, Martigues, was really not a great team. And in UEFA Cup, it's a 4-0 loss against Bohemian Prague, which is by far not a great team. So this is weird. You have still some good players, so something is broken inside this club. The president is André Laurent, the new president, but he's not as good as José Rocher in terms of, putting a good direction. Not talking about finance, but to put a technical team together. And the coach is Guy Briet, which really was not known too much. I mean, in respect to Robert Urbain, it's a huge change. Guy Briet was in charge of a youth team. He also was in charge of a military regiment called Bataillon Joinville. When the French player had to do military service, this is where he went. So he had Michel Platini or Bossis there to do military service. But Guy Briet is no match to Robert Urbain. So some good hope, some good players are there, but still you can see that dark clouds are coming, perhaps because the coach is not great, the president is not as great as well, and some fantastic players have left, unfortunately.
Just to give some perspective on the timeline, on July 18th, 1982, Rocher admitted that some players had been paid from a slush fund. In August, Rocher formally admitted the existence of this La Caisse Noire, and Erban and Larios themselves admitted that they had received payments from La Caisse Noire. It was reported from a television investigation in August that some of these funds were used as payoffs to local politicians, among other things. In December, there's a General Assembly election for the club. Once the pro Rocher faction came out victorious, I think Erban saw the writing on the wall there. He left the club, and I think he joined Lyon right afterwards. Is that? Yeah, yeah. So he joined the rivals right
Arch
after.
rivals, yeah.
Do you think that was done maybe just to spite them? You think? I don't know. I'm just asking.
I don't know the answer. I would have guessed so because so much rivalry and Roger Rocher hated Lyon. So perhaps as a payback to that, what's interesting, he took Lyon and Lyon was relegated to second division under his management. So probably a payback to Roger Rocher.
And this last season, some of the players also felt that maybe Erban's head was not in managing anyway. I think Jean Villon said that at one point Erban had been an excellent manager and should have left much earlier with his reputation intact. Philippe Mautz felt that when Erban left, his departure would bring calm and tranquility. It did neither. Others like Johnny Rep, he blamed the crisis on Erban for starting the conflict with Rocher. So there's a lot of back and forth. You don't know who's right or who's wrong. Erban's main ally to the end was Larios, and he declared his intention to leave after his sacking, and he would do so shortly thereafter. Pierre Garonner also, he was due to retire in March 1983. He left. That was end of an era. The historic trio of Saint-Étienne was no longer. On May 4th, at the end of the season, André Laurent became the new president of Saint-Étienne. And shortly afterwards, André Bouffard revealed the existence of a second Caisse Noire with bank accounts in Liechtenstein and Switzerland. It only gets worse. So for the 1983-84 season, we have a much depleted Saint-Étienne. Well, we have a new manager, Jean Jourkaeff, father of Yuri, who would last until March 1984 before being replaced by Robert Philippe as Saint-Étienne were sinking. You have Laurent Rousset, who had been one of the brightest hopes of Saint-Étienne. He joined Toulouse. Johnny Rep returned to Netherlands to join PEC as well. Laurent Paganelli joined Toulon. Flemming Christensen returned to his club Lyngby in Denmark. Bernard Gengini joined Monaco and had a resurrection. Lestage joined Tours. Jean Vion joined Paris Saint-Germain. Patrick Battiston joined Bordeaux and had a resurrection and would win the league title. The rivals, besides Jean Jourkaeff as manager, included Daniel Sanchez from Mulhouse, a Paraguayan Carlos Diarte from Real Betis. You have a Polish Janusz Kupchevich from Lech Poznan, and players like Eric Klavlu joining from the youth team. So yeah, it's unrecognizable Saint-Étienne from this is much different from the star-studded Saint-Étienne of just 2 years before. Again, the team would be a shadow of its former self. There would be a famous 0-7 loss at Bordeaux, which showing the contrast between the teams. The team would be relegated after a playoff against Racing Club de Paris. Saint-Étienne would be in the second division. Nevertheless, was it a surprise just how quickly this fall occurred?
It was a surprise that it went so fast. I mean, 8 years between the final of equivalent of Champions League to second division. People, I mean, guess at the beginning of the season that the team will not be great, but being relegated was not really on the minds of people. Indeed, you have a very important departure with, as you say, Battiston, Janvion, Paganelli, Rocher, Gengini. But you still have some players, Castaneda, Mahut, Moison, Zanon, Kupčević, as you say, Sanchez. I remember when Carlos Diarte arrived, there was a big hope from this guy. His nickname was Lobo, I think, the Wolf. But he scored only 2 goals that season. It was a huge disappointment. And some young players were there. I mean, John Jourkaeff is kind of strange in my mind to take him as a coach. I mean, he was a great player. He was the captain of the French national team. He has played 48 times, I think, for France, the dad of Yuri Jourkaeff. But he was playing for Lyon, the archenemy of Saint-Étienne. And before coaching Saint-Étienne, he had just experience in a small Lyon team, not the big Lyon team, and Grenoble, so second division. So not experienced to take a team that is already in trouble. That is kind of weird, especially coming from the arch rival. Still hope the team will not be relegated. In fact, they finished only 1 point, I think, below the team that was not relegated. And then it's the playoff against Racing Paris. It's 0-0 in Colombes, close to Paris. So say, oh, we're going to win. So the Saint-Étienne fans think we're going to win. It's at home. 45,000 fans. The team is very bad, finished 18, but it is so loved that 45,000 fans were in the stands to see that game. And a lot of people were listening to radio to hope that Saint-Étienne will stay because it's really beloved by a lot of French people. And they lost at home 2-0. A total disaster, a sad day for a lot of people. Even people for which Saint-Étienne is not their favorite team. It's my case. I prefer Paris since I'm a kid, but Saint-Étienne is on my mind. I mean, it's the team that made me love soccer. But if you look at the team who plays against Racing in the playoff, the goalie is Castaneda. In defense, you have Ferry, Mahut, Klavlu, Oleksiak, and then Peslon, Zanon, Kupčević, Ribard. And forward, Sanchez and Caro. My God, as you said, it has absolutely nothing to do with 1976 team of a team of Platini. We are talking 2, 3, 4 levels below that. So we knew it was going to be a tough season, but we're hoping that Saint-Étienne will still maintain themselves and then build thanks to this young player. In fact, it happens that when we were in second division, the young player play more and more, and they were very useful to make Saint-Étienne go back to first division.
Yeah, in 1986,
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah. What was the aftermath for Rocher in the subsequent years beset with legal problems?
So bad, really bad. He was condemned to 4 years in jail and a fine of 800,000 francs in 1990. But in fact, he received a presidential pardon in 1991 by the French President Mitterrand. So it's to tell you how French people like the Saint-Étienne team. Say, okay, he made us really dream that we can win European champion. We have fantastic time during some European games. So let me pardon this guy, even if we knew he was guilty. What is quite interesting is after he was sentenced to jail, Rocher never went back to Geoffroy Guichard, the stadium of Saint-Étienne. Never. And he died in 1997.
Yeah, he withdrew from public life. He passed away March 29th, 1997, at the age of 77. He was the French club president with most titles in history of French soccer, nine league at the time. I
Mhm.
imagine the Qatari Paris Saint-Germain side probably has more titles now. He won nine league titles plus one second division title and six cups.
Mhm. All of them with Robert Rubber, which is quite
Yeah,
amazing because at the end they
yeah.
separated. Yeah.
As far as Robert Urban, how did this affect the rest of his career?
Also quite bad, as we just mentioned before. He went to the arch rival Leon. It was related to second division. After that, he went to Saudi Arabia. Now it's quite popular, but at that time it was not popular. But he went there, went to Strasbourg, where it was in second division, came back to Saint-Étienne, in fact, from 1987 to 1990. It was a result of the Guichard family, were very important for Saint-Étienne. I think the Guichard family owned a casino, these shops, and they were very important in the foundation of the team. And he went to Red Star in second division with Repellini, a former player, as his assistant from 1991 to 1995. And he didn't win a second thing after he left Saint-Étienne. And in 1995, he retired and he stayed alone. He stayed at his home. He lived alone with his dogs, as you mentioned. He loved his dogs and he listened to classical music. It was his passion. In fact, his dad was a professional musician. He was playing trombone in the Opera de Nice of Nice. This is where Urban started to play before he joined Saint-Étienne. Some people say that he suffered from alcohol or tobacco use. I don't know if it is true or not, but he completely disappeared from the view of everyone, and not a single title won after leaving Saint-Étienne. So it was bad for everyone, for Rocher, for Robert Robin.
To remind everyone of our discussion about Claude Bez last time, is there a cautionary tale as other great French teams like Claude Bez's Girondins de Bordeaux and Bernard Tapie's Olympique Marseille were also similarly beset with problems in their search for glory?
It's true, it appears that way. You also have Daniel Echter
Oh
in
yeah, and
Paris
Lagardère,
Saint-Germain.
Lagardère at the Racing Club.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it looks like there is a curse there. I don't know if it's a curse or this guy was so passionate that they wanted their teams to win, and sometimes they achieved glory and the glory went above their head and decided, okay, I'm not going to follow laws anymore. I'm going to pay legally. I'm going to buy referees. I don't know what happened. It looks like it was a curse there. It seems that way. I'm always hoping that the French team with a good mentality will win. We'll see in the future. I mean, Paris Saint-Germain won, but it's on the Qatari that has a lot of money. I still hope like a team like Saint-Étienne where you train your own players and you hire from time to time some very good foreigners. You make the team developing over the years, and then you begin to win a lot of competition, including European competition, being still with a great mentality. Sochaux was like that in 1981.
Or even
Nantes,
Nantes, yeah.
yeah, Nantes, exactly.
Yeah.
Nantes in 1980. We didn't hear too many problems coming from that team. We still hope. We don't know. But, there are a lot of other teams where we heard a lot of problems. Real Madrid, Barcelona at one point. So I don't know if these guys, they want so much glory that they believe that they are above the laws. It's a pity.
In closing, what is the legacy of the post 1976 Saint Etienne of Rocher, Robert Herbin, Pierre Garonner era for French football? Will all the previous glory be tainted by the scandal?
The scandal is there, unfortunately, and people will not forget that. But Saint-Étienne is really beloved by French people, even now. I mean, the team is second division. That year it goes up and down. I mean, if you talk to people of my generation, you will always feel we always want Saint-Étienne to win there because this is a team that made us love soccer. That is a team that shows that French teams can win. It was also very important for the French national team when Michel Lago started. He had a very good player from outside Saint-Étienne, like Michel Platini, Maxime Bossis, or Didier Six. But he also had some great players from Saint-Étienne, like Jean Vion or Rocher. So it was very important to build that. So mix. I still prefer to see the good side, that they were a good team. And I remember especially the European journeys, the games against Dynamo Kiev, against Hamburg, the games against PSV Eindhoven. That's great.
Yeah, I remember in an interview with, I think, with Onze Mondial, the interviewer told Michel Platini that the renewal of French football kind of starts with your ascension. And he immediately disagreed. He said, no, it was with the L'Épopée des Verts. That's what started everything. So,
It's a good point. I think it's a mixture of the two. But we are very lucky to have this team. But at the same time, we're very lucky to have not only Michel Platini, but also Maxime Bossis and Didier Six at a lesser extent. So, and Michel Hidalgo as a great coach. But I think they're very, very, very important, yeah, for
yeah.
the development of French soccer.
With that, I would like to thank you once again for your participation in these interviews. All our respective contact information is listed on the blog and podcast uploads. So, Laurent, thank you once again.
You are very welcome, and thank you once again to do this wonderful podcast.
No, thank you.